Hey there, home chefs. Today I have finally decided to take on something that pubs around Britain are not making enough of: Yorkshire Pudding Wraps. If you've gone to a pub on a Sunday, odds are you've had a Sunday roast, and you've probably enjoyed these delicious beauties. Yorkshire puddings are fantastic in this format, don't get me wrong. Bit of gravy in there and we're laughing. But if we could encase our whole Sunday roast as a wrap, it's an absolute game changer. And in all my life I've only come across 2 pubs that actually serve it. Everyone else is trying to keep it a secret, so instead of leaving it to the few pubs scattered across the country brave enough to make them, we're going to make them right here at home. Let's get cooking. Now, there are quite a few elements to get through, just like any Sunday roast. The most important for me is the roast beef. I'm not making any old dry, overcooked roast beef here, no. I'm talking a beautiful, medium rare, juicy beef. So you need a good roasting joint, removed from the fridge and salted liberally for half an hour. Once it's been brined, be sure to pat it very dry so moisture doesn't block our sear. We want a good sear before roasting for colour and flavour. You should be hearing something like this. Music to my ears. Render out any fat your joint has, and once each side has been given a minute or so, remove it from the pan. Now before we add it to the oven, I recommend a dry rub to really elevate everything a bit further. I'm using 2 parts mustard powder to 1 part rosemary with some pepper and salt, which when rubbed over and roasted is going to give a wonderful, savoury, aromatic hit of goodness. Now, cooking time is different for every joint, so if you can, it is definitely better to use a temperature probe of sorts to get the internal temp spot on. I'm a big fan of this one from Meter, because it's wireless and comes with a really handy app that even gives you the temperature for desired levels of dumbness, so you don't even need to enter it yourself, and leaves getting the time right to the experts. If you do use a probe, don't forget to insert it in the direction you're slicing, otherwise you'll puncture a big hole through all those gorgeous slices. If you're not using probe, then it's in the oven for about 25 minutes per 500 grams, plus another 20 minutes at 180 degrees. The result is a beautifully crusted, prime piece of meat that is great in sandwiches, on its own, or as a filling for our Yorkshire wraps. Make sure it's rested and then slice nice and thin for when serving. Right, beef done. Next up, one can't go without the other, a caramelised onion gravy. Now I found these quite large shallots near me, and I thought I've got to try these, but a yellow onion would normally be what I'd use. You want long shards, which these shallots were great for, as I think it has the nicest texture when eating. Caramelising onions is all about patience. We want to draw out the sweetness and colour as much as possible. So, using the same pan that we rendered out the beef fat in, cook these on a lowish heat with a splash of water and a lid covering about 90% for a good 8 minutes, so they really soften in the steam without burning. And then for a further 10 minutes, stirring regularly to get the colour and sweetness. And while we do that, if you're interested in other great pub recipes, have a look at my Pub Classics playlist where I'm making all the pub favourites we love, home chef style. Or hit the subscribe button to get notified of the next Pub Classic video. Right, once your onions start to look like this, we can then turn them into a gravy by flavouring with some bay leaves and, yeast extract like Marmite, sprinkling in some flour, and then gradually adding in beef stock until it's quite runny. Next add some herbs and soy sauce and reduce that down to your desired gravy consistency. Such an underrated part of the roast dinner, and by steaming the onions and slowly cooking them, it's all the oniony goodness with no overpowering bitterness. Save this for any meat dish really. Last thing before the wraps are these unbelievably crispy yet fluffy roasties. I say use peeled potatoes as the crispy exterior is much more difficult with the peel I find, and you also want these sized chunks to balance the surface area for crispiness, but not too big that it takes forever to cook. Then, in cold water, bring them to a boil, and after about 5 minutes, drain the water, and then give them a quick toss in the hot pot. This is a key step as those craggly bits are what help crisp up the exterior in the oven. Next is now very British, but if you can get your hands on some beef dripping, your roast potatoes are going to explode to life. This fat has so much flavour and coats the potatoes perfectly to get that crispy texture. If not beef, then any animal fat works well too, like goose or duck fat. And not that, then some kind of oil is a minimum, as we need to get these cooking in a fat of some sort to achieve that crispy, fluffy result. Man, I've said crispy a lot. Apologies, but it's roast potato. They're crispy, what can I say? Right, with a deep roasting tray, even better if it's the one the beef cooked in, add some of your dripping or fat and get that melted in a preheated oven of 200 degrees Celsius. Then once that's shimmering, drop in your potatoes and get it all coated in that fat. Hit it with some salt, and then into the oven for 40 minutes, turning at the halfway mark, and out will come these incredible potatoes. Listen to this. How good does that sound? Incredible. Okay, so potatoes check, gravy check, beef check. Let's get them a blanket to wrap up warm. We start with a slightly thinner Yorkshire pudding batter of sieve flour, salt, and eggs whisked together, and then while constantly stirring, slowly add in the milk until it's completely combined. Cover that in a jug and leave to rest for about 15 minutes. Now to make these, if you have a cast iron pan, that's great, although mine actually ended up being a bit too large, as you'll see, but essentially you need a pan that can go in the oven. Get that ripping hot in the oven and then melt in a lot of the beef dripping. This is key to the batter frying properly. Once you've got a full layer like this, pour in some of your batter. Don't make it too big like my first attempt. As you can see, it's a bit too thin so it doesn't flip well or puff up at all. So pour to about 8 inches in diameter and then get that in the oven for 5 or 6 minutes until it comes out looking like exactly what you dreamed. Yorkshire pudding as a wrap. Beautiful. Flip that over and give it another 2 minutes in the oven to crisp up. What I love about these as well is normal Yorkies have that soft tearing quality, but these wraps have a bit of that as well as a deliciously crispy texture which works so well. Right, on goes the gravy, on goes the beef, touch of salt flakes, and out she comes. The combo of a crispy Yorkshire pudding with that juicy roast beef is so good. Get that plated up with some of the roast potatoes, and you've got something that pubs are going to be envious over. Sunday roast at its best. Let's have a bite. Oh yeah, nailed it. But we can go one step further. Let's get the potatoes in there too. Lay them on top of the onions, smash them open a bit, add the beef, and you've got the complete roast, bar some veg, all in one bite. There you have it. The item on the menu that pubs are hiding from you. Well, now you've got it at home. Dig into that, and I'll see you in the next video.